let's get some more of what Ange Postecoglou has had to say. Now, I will say that he was asked about this. He was asked about his record of winning titles and trophies in his second season with the club, and he was continually asked about it. So he said, I'll correct myself. I don't usually win things. I always win things in my second year. Nothing has changed. I don't say things unless I believe them. Oh, Craig.
Yeah. Well, he was managing in Australia, he was managing in Japan, and he was managing in Scotland, where Celtic were by far and still are the strongest side. So that was a lot easier. He's at a club who have been derided for their lack of winning trophies. And that's a bit of a statement. I think he could have swerved that one a little bit better, to be honest with you. But, you know, it's factual what he says. I'm not getting away from that. But, you know, these things will come back to sort of be thrown in his face if they have another. You know, last year they went out the Carabao Cup, I think it was to Fulham. Disappointingly, he made a bunch of changes and they got knocked out very early. And obviously the rest of it was pretty disappointing. So yeah, I mean, factually what he's saying is correct, but he's at Tottenham now, he's managing in the Premier League. It's way more difficult to win things than it is in Japan. It's way more difficult to win things than it is in Scotland currently, particularly when you're managing the best team and the biggest club in Scotland, and Celtic. He's not dining at that table anymore. This is another rebuild at Tottenham. And so there's a lot of pressure on him this year, and particularly the way they've started the season, not just the weekend. They've played some great football again in the first 3 or 4 games, but their final third product has been very, very poor. And now he's got a bit of an issue at the other end that he's got to solve. So he's fighting some early season fires for sure, there's no doubt about that.
He's got experience, Shaka, right?
Yeah.
He knows he's going to get continually asked this. Did he walk into an answer like that? Could he have answered what he said,
well,
like Craig's saying?
To Craig's point, yes, he certainly could have answered it a whole lot better, but for me, and I look at this, I think what Postecoglou is doing here is he's throwing on the gauntlet. He's saying he's setting a standard for his own expectations about, as a manager, what he expects of his teams. Now, Craig spoke about Postecoglou and certainly the back end of last season and how certainly his mentality seemed to change. There was a shift. I felt it started with that City game, where, you know, there were suggestions, oh, let's lose to City, make sure Arsenal win the title. I felt there was a big change in everything about Postecoglou's demeanour at that point. And a lot of what he was saying is, this is a club that we're not thinking about winning trophies. We're thinking about denying other people winning trophies. And that's not his personality. So I think this is kind of born of that frustration, that he's saying, listen, we have to win trophies. I win trophies. We have to get that in, as part of our own culture within this football club, that we expect to win trophies. And we say that outright. Now, again, kind of given the start of the season, of course, you put yourself under that pressure. But I think this is more because of what he feels is that mentality that we've spoken about for years with Spurs, of we aren't going to win anything, but at least we're going to make sure Arsenal aren't, or something equally silly.
What do you think, Mario?
Yeah. No, I totally understand. Look, I played a long time for the rivalry, and when you're in London, the feeling always you get is that it's always been a team that's very talented. It always has a lot of talent. But the thing is, they also have to understand that they have to be a bit meaner, in the sense of, like, there is nothing to get here. We're going to get what we want. And I think the longer it takes them to really have that feeling, the more people start thinking, like, yeah, it looks great sometimes and sometimes looks bad. They have to get away from that. That feeling will always be with them if they don't start believing. And the visionary that Postecoglou brought in, he said, look, I think from the quotes that he made is he wants them to start seeing it and believing it. And as long as they don't do that, I know people will say, yeah, but then have to win to something. Yeah, I understand. But sometimes your mindset has to change. And if the mindset stays the same in Spurs, I am very, very sorry for them, because it must hurt them seeing Arsenal do well, do Chelsea do well. You don't want a Palace to go over you. You understand? You don't want all that. So you gotta step up, and they gotta do something, because they got the players now, they got the stadium. It looks great, but you also gotta have a party, because if not, you got nothing.
Let's get to Arsenal, because next week they have to go to the Etihad and face Manchester City. Are we going to see a similar setup for them? Are we going to see this defensive shape from them again against the City? How are they going to play them?
Well, I think Rice will be back from his suspension, so that's something. I think we saw that last year where they went up there.
Yeah.
If memory serves me right, and played for a draw, got a draw,
and got a draw. Yeah.
Yes.
And we're a little certainly
yeah.
I was a little critical at the time, thinking again this mentality was that was okay if you're going to win the title, which they didn't. Now at the time it was a good point, so they said, but in the end it was not, and that was a full side, and I was a little critical. But this is earlier in the season, so I think that mindset can be slightly different. Because a long haul from here, when they went to the Etihad last year, I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was getting to the business end, and they didn't go for it. And that was a decision they made, and that was borne out in the fact they did not win the league. I think with the injuries and the fact it's so early in the season, I do think they'll be a little bit more coy about how they go about it. Not sort of part of the bus stuff, but I think they'll make sure they've got a really good shape and look to hit on the counter. And I think for one, at this moment in time, that for me would not be a bad strategy.
I have to say, I think Arsenal go about their business exactly as we saw last season, exactly as we saw this weekend against Spurs. Because while we sit here and we talk about whether it's the delivery from Bukayo Saka or the header and how strong Arsenal looked defensively, Arsenal had just about half the possession that Spurs did. Arsenal had just about half the shots that Spurs did. Arsenal had half the passes that Spurs did. Spurs, we normally have these conversations when we're talking about City against anybody else. Arsenal were half of Spurs. They got the points, and that's great. You walk away from it with that, and absolutely you take it. But in terms of approach, I expect the same. I think what changes is, with the greatest of respect, Dominic Solanke is no Erling Haaland. You give Manchester City that kind of possession, those kind of efforts at your goal, they'll probably find the back of the net. An early goal changes his game. But while it's 0-0, expect Arsenal to do exactly as we saw last weekend.
The one thing I would say, just on that, and you can perceive this in any way, is when it was City and Liverpool, and I think it's going to be City and Arsenal again this season. I know Liverpool had a blip. Maybe they'll be in it all the way. I don't think so.
We're heading there next.
We're
heading there next.
But I think it'll be Man City and Arsenal again. But when it was Man City and Liverpool were winning Champions Leagues, and then they won the Premier League, City were doing the same thing. I don't remember Liverpool taking a backward step. I don't. Even they got the Etihad. They didn't always win, didn't always get the result they wanted, but did not take a backward step. It was in your face. It was head on, and maybe that was just the manager. Maybe that was his sort of personality.
Yeah.
But they stood up to Manchester City and went, "We're going to play our game, and you're going to play your game, and it's going to be a belter, and we'll see what happens." But they went nose to nose with them. I just feel now and again, and maybe tactically, he's going to get it spot on. But I just feel Arsenal have a little change in philosophy when it comes to City, and I don't really remember Liverpool when they were successful doing